Welcome everybody back to the Nuggets of Gold podcast and YouTube channel. Today it's just going to be me. I'll be talking really quickly just about Jimmie Ward. But before we get into Jimmie Ward and just why he's this very overrated player, I want to talk about a couple roster cuts. A couple days ago, the roster was cut down to 80 players. There's going to be another roster cut that will bring it down to 53 on August 31st. The two notable guys that were cut, though, were River Craycraft, who started against the Packers last year when the 49ers were down bad with a lot of injuries. Another guy that got cut that's a pretty notable player would be B.W. Webb. We've seen him in preseason a few times. He played for the Bengals. He's like 31 or 32 at this point in his career, but he was also cut. Neither of those, I think, are very surprising. I guess you could say River Craycraft being cut this early is a little bit unusual, but besides that, I mean, I think it makes sense. But with all that said, let's get on to Jimmie Ward here. I wanted to talk about him mostly because my last guest, Kobe, he had kind of talked about it off air. We were just talking about how some people just don't appreciate Jimmie Ward. We got into a conversation, so that's why I'm kind of talking about this today. But if you guys didn't realize, Jimmie Ward is the longest tenured 49er. He was drafted in the first round. I want to say it was 2015. He is one of, if not the most versatile defensive back in the NFL. And I know that sounds like kind of like an outrageous statement when you didn't have the name value of some of these other guys, but Jimmie Ward has legitimately played every single spot in the secondary for this 49ers defense. And there have been multiple schemes that have been ran when the 49ers have had Jimmie Ward. And he's even played linebacker. So he's played free safety, box safety, slot corner, outside corner. He's played pretty much everywhere, and he even played linebacker in the 49ers dark ages a few years back. But so many of the former and current 49ers, including Richard Sherman, have talked about how underpaid he really is. He's making a little bit under 10 million AAV a year. And the craziest part about all this is that you hear all these guys talk about how great he is, how versatile he is, and stuff like that. And there are some fans, and even some 49er fans, that don't even think he's a good player, really based on box scouting him and going, oh, yeah, this guy has 2 career interceptions. Oh, he sucks. He hasn't had a pick since, I think it's 2016. Well, 2019 and 2020, he was so important to this defense. Like I said, he's able to bounce all over the place, but we've been playing this high safety spot in this Robert Saleh scheme and D'Amico Ryan scheme. He has excelled. He's also a guy I brought that he makes under $10 million. He took a pay cut. He could have went to Las Vegas and played for the Raiders. He chose to play with a competitor in the 49ers and make a little bit less money. So, a lot of fans always want guys to do that. And then it seems like in this case, Jimmie Ward wasn't really even applauded for doing that and taking that pay cut. But he did. So I brought up how great he was in the last couple of years. I think the biggest game that you can point out to look at to see his importance was that Rams game, which was a dominant performance. I want to say he had a couple PBUs. He had the strip on Jared Goff, but he was just all over the field. It felt like every third down, you really felt Jimmie Ward's presence, and it really felt like they were trying to go after him, and they had absolutely no shot in doing so. I think right now, Jimmie Ward is probably the best and the most important player in the Niners secondary. I think if he was to go down, they would be in a really, really tough spot. I think another guy that you could bring up would be Jason Verrett, because Jason Verrett, I mean, he's going to be really important next year, being the number one corner there and also having that injury history. But Jimmie Ward, I mean, he's a guy, like I said, he's played really well, doesn't have necessarily the interception numbers, but it seems like a lot of not only the 49ers fan base, but just the NFL fan base in a whole has put this injury-prone label on him. Oh, a guy, he doesn't really put up numbers. But bottom line is, to me at least, is the tape doesn't lie. Jimmie Ward is a very special player. Fortunately, I don't think he will ever get the love that he deserves, but he has been one of the guys that has been on this 49ers defense for a long time. And, there was a few years back, it was basically him and DeForest Buckner that would be the only guys that flashed on that team when the 49ers were a really, really bad group of personnel on defense. But I think that I'm expecting a third consecutive really strong season from Jimmie Ward, and I think that everyone should really, really appreciate this dude for what he's able to do. He is a huge part of the defense. They would in 2019 they would not have been nearly as good if they didn't have him in the defensive backfield. And we even saw like when Kwasi Tart went out and stuff, like how much their defense was affected. Jimmie Ward not playing this year will especially affect this defense a ton, but even that year, like they needed him badly down the stretch, and he was there for the most part. Did go down in the Super Bowl, and then you saw what happened to the secondary in that case as well. But just wanted to quickly get a quick message that Jimmie Ward is maybe the most underrated secondary player in the league, and maybe he's one of the most overall underrated players in the league. So got to give Jimmie Ward some love. Hopefully, any 49er fans listening recognize how great he is, because he is a really, really special player, and I think that he gets talked about like he's a below average safety, and it's really just disrespectful to him. He's a really good player. So got to love some Jimmie Ward. Tomorrow, I'm going to have Aiden back on, and then I'm going to have a guest, Tyler Crowder, and we're going to be doing a little bit, not really a debate, but just a discussion about Trey Lance and Zach Wilson. I've voiced my opinions on the Jets selection a lot, and I think one of the biggest things that I had an issue with was I think Trey Lance is a much more talented player, and I know that's not the consensus, but Tyler doesn't really believe that. He likes Trey Lance. I think he had him rated in like his top 12 overall players in the draft. That he does a lot of scouting stuff, so it'll be cool to hear a different perspective from him. But we'll be discussing, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, how those two's futures look, and just everything. So it'll be really fun to talk about those guys, talk about another quarterback that was just drafted as well. So if you guys are not subscribed, you guys like the content that I bring, please subscribe. That really helps the channel a lot. And also drop a like, leave a comment what you think about Jimmie Ward, and then come back tomorrow. We'll be talking about Trey Lance and Zach Wilson, so that'll be really fun as well. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you guys.